Cashman. I was born and raised in Winona, Minnesota, and I came here 40 years ago. And it's interesting that what brought me here 40 years ago was actually tied into Highway 14. I came here, I was graduating from college in Winona, and I got a job offer here in Owatonna. And so a classmate of mine in Winona said, I will drive you to Owatonna and we'll stay at my mom and dad's house because we live there and then you can get to your interview tomorrow. I said, I have to go home and look Owatonna up on the map. I don't even know where it is. And she said, well, that's the bad news because we have to take the Ho Chi Minh Trail to get there. Now this was, like I say, this was 1974 and driving back and forth from here to my hometown of Winona, I've certainly come to learn that it is not a good road, and that why are we still struggling 40 years later to get this finished. I have been endorsed by the DFL here in District 24A to run for the House of Representatives. I found out pretty soon after I filed just how much I don't know, because you get a lot of people sending you endorsements and questions about how do you feel about things, and I found out that I need to study an awful lot. There's a lot that I don't know. I've been a teacher for 40 years. I understand that it's difficult when someone who hasn't been in the classroom wants to tell you what to do in the classroom. And so as I go around and I visit with other people and ask for their endorsement, I think that what I have said the most is you don't want someone sitting at a desk in St. Paul telling you what to do. You want someone to come and tell you what's on the table and then to ask you, will that be a benefit for us? Will that work for us? Is that the right thing to do? And ask the people who know about it what their thoughts are. So I want to study. I want to know the same, like you said, I want to know what things are about. Be proactive to work across the aisles. I think what it comes down to in the end, then that next step is that if you're going to be a legislator or a senator, you have to vote for it then in the end. That it isn't enough to talk about it, to say I support it, to even maybe initiate a bill or author a bill. But then when the money is on the table and the vote is taken, you have to vote for that so that that money does go where you want it to go. And that's what I would like to do.
For 24B, I have served in the legislature now for 10 years, and I served on transportation policy my freshman year. That was very interesting and educational. I have a background in nursing, and I serve on Health and Human Service Finance and Policy, and I co-chair Commerce in the House. And I am a greater Minnesota legislator. And I say that with passion and pride, because there's few of us left. And this is part of the problem for us to get to be heard in the House and the Senate and at the Capitol. Although I honestly will say this, we've been heard on the Highway 14 project this last year. Although you look back at the folks, Les Abrams, I see you've been at this for what, 40 years at least, working, coming, testing, 40 years. On one project is ridiculous that isn't finished. And so I do agree with the gaps, and we should have had this highway should have been connected. All the way. It should have gone all the way through. It should have been finished. But my piece of that highway had better get finished. This is absolutely it's ridiculous. And I think a 20-year-old was just killed again on Highway 14 just recently. So I hear it all the time. And yes, Anita, people do bring me things like that. And I actually sat through a hearing on what it costs to buy and purchase bituminous versus concrete. Very interesting. I learned a lot. And also about how deep and how long and how thick it had to be, and they were like squishing it down and making it much more frugal than I think I'd like to drive on. So there is work being done all around the system, and thank you for the Alliance and the work that you do and the information that you bring. But it can't just stay in the Transportation Finance or Policy Committee. It has to come out onto the floor. It has to get to leadership. Apparently, Governor Dayton, in his comment, I believe that he, and I trust that he now does prioritize, along with my leader, Representative Thiessen, the greater Minnesota transit area. That we've made the case, but it's you stop making the case. If you back off, you'll be at this another 40 years. And that's what my experience has been, and the time that I have spent in the legislature, that I have learned that you cannot back off. I did have a bill to pay $200 million, and people laughed at that. They thought that was ridiculous. It got their attention. We did get some money for that Highway 14. Did we get enough? No. But we did make the case. So I am grateful for the Corridors of Commerce, Chairman Hornstein. That was brilliant. And he brought that idea to me early on, and I said, this is great. Of course I support this. So I'm happy that we have that, because it is the corridors of commerce that we are concerned about in greater Minnesota, getting our product to the people. And here's the deal. The people want their product instantly. They want what they ordered an hour ago. This is where we're at with all of our smartphones. People really do, and for some reason the market has been able to do that for people. So we do have to make our case from greater Minnesota. I'm very pleased to hear from the smart people. I've always been very proud of what you do, because I carry a lot of legislation for the disabled and elderly, and they want transportation. They want to be involved in their community and have the dignity of having, transportation to get to and from their fun things and their groceries and their doctor's appointments and all of that. We want to live in greater Minnesota. We're proud of where we live. And so we need to make that case loud and clear, which I tried to do, and I asked, and you all have been there, but don't quit. You have to continue. We have to keep going back. Honestly, I think we do have a governor, and I think we do have, I know in my leadership, Representative Thiessen, who does get the greater Minnesota issues, and as long as you got their ear, this is the time, I believe, to make some progress. So I'm hoping that we can. We'll have to find revenue. There isn't revenue. There is actually not even, I think, much of a taste for it, although I will say the wheelage tax helped, not enough. Rice County enacted, you enacted it, a few other counties enacted it. There's going to have to be everything on the table in your Transportation Finance Committee to take a look at where, and we're going to have to make some decisions to move forward, not just to talk about it. And that's where we're at.
Worked collectively on quite a few different bills trying to present getting dollars here to finish Highway 14, and I'll let you talk about more of that, Patty, yourself. But 2 years ago, I really started talking about how transportation is more than just transporting people or transporting products. It really is an economic hub. It is the economic driver for most of our communities, especially in rural Minnesota. And so I was very ecstatic when we created the Corridors of Commerce this year that gave the Department of Transportation another avenue of determining priorities of transportation. Some of the challenge we have had has come about because of our dedicated source of funding. For years and years, it was adequate and sometimes a little bit more than adequate in order to deal with the growth and roads and maintenance that we had. However, as maintenance outgrew our increases in that funding, we have slowly eroded away our necessary funding for that until it's finally caught up to us. And then with budgetary restraints over the years and the economy, we've let it slide more. And it's a matter of simply economics, of understanding that now's the time we need to start reinvesting. I truly believe that there are three primary responsibilities of the state. One is educating our children, and I think we all agree with that. That's part of the state constitution. The other one is infrastructure and all of the needs we have. And primarily that's going to be roads and bridges. There's some buildings we have to take care of and other things, but when it's roads and bridges, transportation, allowing people to have easy access between the area. The third item is is public safety, which includes health and human services, fire department, and to me, those are the three primary things. Of that, transportation is one of the primary aspects of one of those three. And I think it's time for us to start spending some time reviewing that. As an example, this past year we had a $1.2 billion surplus that we had that we allowed us to divvy up between other sources. What disappointed me in all of that was we only spent $30 million towards corridors of commerce and transportation in general for that, in which those would have been one-time, or at least 1 out of 50-year time expenses, and instead we spent a lot of it on ongoing expenditures that will be ongoing year after year. It would sure be nice if we were able to set some of those dollars aside whenever we have surpluses to go into roads and bridges. Because as we talk about, in this district alone, we heard from the department, 20% of the interstate roads are in this district, 20% of the bridges are in this district. To put it in another way, and if I have this wrong, let me know, this district has more bridges than any other district in the state and more interstate highway miles than anywhere in any other district in this state. That puts an undue burden on here. And yes, it's adjusted somewhat in what the revenues are got here. But it's important to know that we have some major challenges here in the state. Go further than that, the study that I saw, by the way, I'm on both transportation, finance and transportation policy committees, and so I've been privy to a lot of surveys and studies. And the last study that I heard from the Department of Transportation indicated that our unmet needs over the next 20 years are going to total $12 billion. That's $600 million a year of unmet need that we're going to have just to stay competitive with improvements, expansions, and maintenance of our program. $600 million, you understand, you can't just divide it over evenly because you need more up front in order to stay ahead. Otherwise, you get farther behind as you go. So let's assume it's in the next couple of years we need $800 million more. Our gas tax alone only brings in $860 million. So that's doubling the amount of dollars just to maintain it. That's a huge challenge for us to deal with, but I believe it's one that we can do if we decide that we need to start investing general funding dollars and that we invest in other avenues and resources, finding some efficiencies, and among them, I think it's very critical for us to start putting together a plan in which we finish projects rather than doing piecemeal hodgepodge projects. One of the telling examples was a map that I saw that had all of the 4-lane, 2-lane, 4-lane sections across the state. And it's not just a few. I mean, it's hundreds of them all over the state because people, back when there were earmarks, got them from around their cities but never connected them. And I think it's time for us, and I think corridors of commerce will allow us to do that, for us to start connecting major portions of the road and making that a priority before we move on. That means that there are going to be some communities that are going to wait longer and some that will get it sooner. But I think unless we have a conscientious plan to finish these arteries, we're going to have the stopgap methods all the time. So I think we need to keep working on that. So I do think that as we look at the funding mechanism, and by Constitution, most of our funding has to be broken down, and this page here really did an excellent job of putting that together, where you get 95% of your funding through those three sources. You got 62% goes to state highway, 29% to the county highways, and 9% to the cities. That leaves a lot left for others to have to do. If you add up all the roads that we have, including township roads, cities, streets, and so forth, it'll circle the equator 3 times. That's a lot of roads to try to maintain on a regular basis, let alone rebuild. So we have some challenges in front of us, but I know that working together, we certainly can get that accomplished. And but there's going to be some pain involved with it. But if we don't do it, we're going to come to a place where we won't be able to recover for a long time. So we need to keep working.
27A. I have the Republican endorsement. And I first wanted to say thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for all the professionals, the experts who got up here and explained so much, because I learned a lot. I'm a teacher, and my experience with transportation at this point is my own car going back and forth to school, and buses bringing the kids to school. Well, one thing as a teacher, I love visuals, and I liked how Margaret said at the beginning, she said, think of transportation as a system. And I like that, because I think of our human body, we have different systems, and if you think of our circulatory system, and if I only concentrated on my veins and not my arteries, or vice versa, there's going to be a problem. And so I can see how, as counties and cities and as a whole state, we all have to work together. It's not just a Steele County issue or a Freeborn County issue or Dodge County, and I think I have 5 counties in my district, so it's a big issue, and it's important. I've talked to a lot of local people, local businesses, and there's one local business that says, you've got to get this highway, we got to get this fixed, it's damaging our trucks, and I can see how important that is to businesses. When I talk to local people, they talk, of course, their own roads, and they talk a lot about roundabouts. I don't know if roundabouts are good or bad, but a lot of people are like, what are we doing? So if roundabouts are good, we probably need to do a better job explaining to people why they are good, because there's a lot of people that it doesn't make sense for. But just examples of talking to people and how transportation is important. And I would just say my own personality is I like to research things and understand it before I make decisions. So as a representative, that's what I would do. I like to talk to the people who have the boots on the ground and know what's going on. So if I'm going to talk education, I'm going to go talk to teachers and administrators and parents. And if it's transportation, then a lot of the people that are here are the ones that I would need to talk to understand it and make good decisions. I teach my first graders. Every year we talk about wants and needs and the differences. And I think as a state, we have to also look at wants and needs. And I put transportation in the needs category. And therefore it needs to be a priority. And I don't know that it always is. From the sounds of it, I'll just give a little example of in our bonding bill that we had this past year. We bonded more for a $90 million Senate building from my source, and I hope my source is correct, and if this is not correct, let me know, but we bonded more for that $90 million Senate building than we did for roads and bridges for this particular bonding bill, and to me that's not right, because it again goes back to that system, and it's an important system, and it affects everything in our state from business to personal needs. So I can see transportation is important. I can also see I have a lot more to learn about transportation, and I will look forward to doing that as your next representative, I hope. So thank you for having me here again. Appreciate it.